Greetings, gamers! Welcome to the second installment of my Dissecting Rogue Decks series, and in today's episode, I will be continuing on with Monarchs. I have very many decks to show off, and I'm going to be going over my Absolute Monarchs deck, which is basically a mishmash of all of the Mega Monarchs. It's going to be very fun. Without further ado, let's get into the showcase, shall we? Here we have it, folks. Absolute Monarch. Now, I will preface this by saying any card that I went over in any form of detail in the previous episode, I will not be doing the same in any further episode. It's just going to have to be something that you watch all of the episodes to make sure you are up to snuff with everything I'm using. And the reason why this is because then I would just be repeating myself over and over and over again about cards that are already named and I've already spoken of, so on and so forth. But there are plenty of cards in this deck that I have not spoken of. Firstly, you're going to see that this is a 48 card deck. Absolute Monarch is a deck that wants to go second. And because it is a deck that wants to go second, it needs to be within 42 to 48 to have the same consistency of 40 cards going first. Now, you could just go second with 40 cards, and it will have an even better consistency than going first with 40 cards. This is absolutely true, and there is no denying that that's the case. But because I have that leeway, I'm going to use that leeway because it allows me to use a few extra cards for the fun of it, and that's pretty much it. So, without further ado, here we go. Lucius, the Shadow Vassal, the very first Vassal I'm going to be talking about. He is an interesting card. So you can banish one level 5 or higher monster from your graveyard, special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. He's an extender. Now, you do have to have a level 5 or higher monster in your graveyard. Luckily, there are ways to do that. Now, I don't have Foolish Burial in this deck, and don't really care to necessarily need to have it in this deck or use it, but that is definitely a way that you could do that. You could even use like extra Foolish Burial and dump a level 5 or higher Synchro or Fusion summon monster to your graveyard and banish them. And that's also a really cool idea because frankly, this deck is using Domain, absolutely is Domain, but it's only using Domain for the level modulation as well as the attack buff on my turn, unless I get rid of my extra deck, which there is a way to do so. So that's pretty interesting. Now, concerning this extension is still good, but because I have no banishment recursion for monsters, you do have to be very careful what you're banishing. If this card is tributed for a tribute summon, you can look at all set cards your opponent controls. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. You can only use each effect of Lucius the Shadow Vassal once per turn. So he gets a spell speed 4. Just look at all of your set spells, or all of your opponent's set spells and traps, which is very, very good. And the reason why it's very good is particularly for certain decks in the Monarchs, and it's still good in this deck because I do have Mobius and Gramork, the Mega Monarchs. But the reason why I say this is because you want to be able to know what you're blowing up, especially if your opponent has a bunch of cards on the field, and you have a limit on how many cards you can destroy, so you can sort of see what you want to go for and what you can get away with destroying with your summons, and we'll get to that later. I have 3 Idea, the Heavenly Squire, just good cards all around. And then I have 1 Mithra, the Thunder Vassal. If this card is in your hand, you can activate this effect. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. Also, special summon this card. And if you do, special summon 1 Vassal token, Thunder type Light, level 1, attack 800, defense 1000, to your opponent's field in defense position. So there's actually some crazy cool tech about this card. This card blocks your opponent from being able to use infinite impermanence on his turn, well, on your turn, if you're going first, because you're giving your opponent a monster. And if your opponent decides to imperm your Mithra, all that's going to do is not give your opponent a token. That's all it will do. realistically speaking, that doesn't really bother you or affect you, because sometimes that token is more of a hindrance to you than it is not. It is still very helpful, though. If you're going first, you don't really care if you give your opponent a token, and there's ways to take that card away regardless. If this card is tributed for a tribute summon, you can activate this effect. You can tribute summon one monster during your main phase this turn, in addition to your normal summon set this turn. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You can only use each effect of Mithra, the Thunder Vassal, once per turn. So she allows you to get another tribute summon. So you could technically, if you had something like Time Tearing Morganite, which I do not, you could get her effect off multiple different ways in this deck. Now, the reason why you would never see Time Tearing Morganite in a mixed Monarch deck is because all of the vassals, except for Adea and Eidos, are hand effects. Monster effects in the hand to get them on the field. You don't want that. You're basically blocking yourself out of using all of their effects. So I would never use Time Tearing Morganite in this deck. Book of Moon is still very useful, and so is Called by the Grave, but again, these are not necessarily competitive decks. They are casual rogue decks for fun, against bots, against opponents who are just like friends and family, or against like casual mode and not ranked. I have 3 Eidos, the Underworld Squire, and then I have 1 Berlineth, the Firestorm Vassal. You can discard 1 card, special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. If this card is tributed for a tribute summon, you can look at your opponent's hand and banish 1 card from his hand until the end phase. You can only use each effect of Berlineth, the Firestorm Vassal, once per turn. So, interestingly enough, the discard 1 card to special summon him seems like a pretty strong cost, except for the fact that many of your spells and traps want to be in the grave, and even some of your monsters want to be in the grave, like Eidos, Adea, or Erebus. They want to be in the grave. So you do have some discard fodder for this. Many of your vassals also would like to be in the grave if you have an Eidos already there. Then there's Garum, the Storm Vassal. This, in my humble opinion, is the best vassal in the Monarchs repertoire. The problem is he has no way to special summon himself without first returning a tribute summon monster to the hand, because that's what he says. You can return 1 tribute summon monster you control to the hand, special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. I would actually change this to be that you can return any tribute summon monster to the hand, 1 of any tribute summon, even at your opponent's tribute summon monsters to the hand, and then you'd be able to special summon this from your hand to the field. This card is amazing because of its second effect. If this card is tributed for a tribute summon, you can add 1 monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense from your deck to your hand, except Garum the Storm Vassal. You can only use each effect of Garum the Storm Vassal once per turn. He has a Rhoda effect, and this is why he's so good, because you can add any vassal or squire to your hand if he's tributed. Then you have Escher, the Frost Vassal. If your opponent controls 2 or more cards in his spell and trap zones, you can special summon this card from your hand. It's weird. It's weird, right? This card has no drawbacks. It doesn't keep you from using the extra deck. It doesn't do anything like that. It doesn't have a tributed effect. All the other vassals do. Why this one is just randomly not having any of these drawbacks or pluses is kind of very weird. Very weird indeed. Landrobe, the Rock Vassal. If this card is in your hand, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. Also special summon this card, and if you do, change that monster to face-down defense position. So he's kind of like a Book of Moon, but not really. Only works against your opponent, and it's not a quick effect. So it's still good. It still works, especially for certain parts of this deck, but it's, whatever. If this card is tributed for a tribute summon, you can target 1 monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense in your graveyard, except Landrobe, the Rock Vassal. Add it to your hand. So he's recursion, and this recursion can be pretty good. Sometimes it's just not good because you don't really want Adea or Eidos out of your grave, and if they're the only ones in the grave, you kind of don't want to activate this effect. Now, if you have your other vassals in the grave as well, then you do want to activate this effect, because all the rest of them have hand effects and can special summon through some way, shape, or form. If this card is tributed for tribute summon, you can target one monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense. Yep, so you get that recursion. You can only use each effect of Land Robe, the Rock Vessel, once per turn. It's pretty good, pretty good. I have Kiraz, the Light Monarch, went over him the last deck showcase. And then I have Grand Morgue, the Mega Monarch. So the Mega Monarchs all have 8, or they're level 8s with 2800 attack and 1000 defense. All of the other, like the regular Monarchs, are level 5s or 6s with 2400 attack and 1000 defense. The Mega Monarchs are so much better. Just so much better. It's not even funny. So you can tribute summon this card by tributing one tribute summon monster. This is true of all of the Mega Monarchs and Ether and Erebus. When this card is tribute summoned, target up to 2 set cards on the field, destroy those targets. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing an Earth monster, add this additional effect, also draw 1 card after that. So he's supposed to combine with Land Robe. You can special summon Land Robe, get Land Robe on the field, you flip a monster that your opponent has face down, then you summon Grand Morgue over Land Robe. You not only get to destroy 2 set cards on the field, up to 2 set cards on the field. It's not a required effect, it's just up to, which includes your opponent's monster you just put face down and whatever face down spell or trap he has. And then if you summoned him over a Earth monster, you get to draw 1 card after that. So all of the Mega Monarchs have an effect where if they're summoned over the correct attribute, you get an additional effect, and I do really much like that. Mobius is interesting. Mobius the Mega Monarch is kind of like a Harpy's Feather Duster in this deck. So when this card is tribute summoned, you can target up to 3 spell and trap cards on the field, destroy those targets. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing a water monster, add this additional effect. Your opponent cannot activate the targeted cards in response to this effect's activation. You have to be very careful. If you chain anything else to this effect yourself, then your opponent can activate those cards. If your opponent were to chain a monster effect to this effect, then your opponent can then activate those cards. It's just to this effect, it's a spell speed 4. So you get a spell speed 4 Harpy's Feather Duster for 3 spells and traps, up to 3 spells and traps on the field, if nothing else is chained to this monster. So you do have to be careful of this. This means that if you have Return of the Monarchs on the field and you tribute summon him, you cannot use Return of the Monarchs. You cannot use anything else pretty much at all. You can't use your Recursion of Idea, so on and so forth. Because if you do, it's going to give your opponent the ability to basically negate this in a way. Your opponent can activate those traps and whatever. But if you were to summon him over a card that's not a water monster, then you just don't have to worry about it. You can chain whatever you please. Thestalos the Mega Monarch says, if this card is tribute summoned, look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card from his hand. Then if it was a monster card, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original level times 200. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing a fire monster, add this additional effect. Also inflict 1000 damage to your opponent after that. It's fun that you can basically build a burn Monarch deck and almost KO your opponent in a single turn just by summoning monsters. This is a very fun effect. Thestalos is a very powerful card and can be very fun indeed. Rise of the Mega Monarch. If this card is tribute summoned, target 1 card on the field and 1 card in either graveyard. Also, if this card was tribute summoned by tributing a wind monster, you can target an additional card on the field. Place the first targets on the top of the deck in any order. Also, after that, return the additional target, if any, to the hand. So this seems kind of complicated, but basically, you get to choose a target on the field and in the graveyard and place those targets on top of the deck. And then if you tribute over a wind monster, you get an additional target on the field. You return that target to the hand. So this actually is very good. You can continuously recur over Garum. If you summon him over Garum, you can get Garum back on the top of your deck, then get Garum back in your hand. Then you can special summon Garum by returning Rise of the Mega Monarch. Then you can do it all over again. You can keep returning and so on and so forth. It's actually a really fun combination. Zaborg the Mega Monarch is the reason why I have an extra deck. So if this card is tribute summoned, target one monster on the field, destroy it. Then if it was a light monster, both players send as many cards as possible from his extra deck to the graveyard, but not more than the original level rank of that destroyed monster. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing a light monster, add this additional effect. You choose the cards your opponent sends to the graveyard. So obviously you want to tribute him over a light monster, because then you get to choose what your opponent sends to the grave, and oftentimes most decks, and extra decks I should say, do not have cards that want to be in the graveyard. Believe me, this is actually incredibly powerful. This is a game-winning move, potentially. So this forces you and your opponent to send as many cards as possible up to that 8. Since he's a level 8, you're going to destroy himself, and then you're going to send 8, and your opponent has to send 8. If your opponent only has 5 left in his extra deck, then he has to send all 5. That's the reason why it says up to as many cards. But you are forced to send the level of monsters at minimum. So if your opponent has 12 extra deck cards, he has to send 8, he keeps 4. And if you tributed over a light monster, which I have plenty of, in fact I have 4 that would allow me to tribute over, then you get to choose those cards, and that's very powerful. So for instance, I have Elder Entity Entus. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one card on the field, destroy it. This is not a once per turn effect, so I send both of them. I get to target 2 cards on the field and destroy them. My opponent can't really do anything against this. Can negate it, but it can bait negates, right? Then I have Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. This is a once per turn effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one monster on the field, destroy it. I have 2 Fossil Machine Skull Wagons. This is also a once per turn effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one spell and trap card on the field, destroy it. I have 1 Wind Pegasus. If another card you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect while this card is on the field or in the graveyard, you can banish this card, then target one card your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck. Because it's an if effect, it happens the moment that somebody decides to destroy one of my cards, which is pretty fun. Then I have Psy-Frame Lord Omega. So if this card is in your graveyard, you can target one other card in the graveyard, shuffle both that card and this card from the graveyard into the deck. None of these cards are summonable in this deck. It's impossible, literally impossible for me to summon any of these cards with this deck. They are literally just there to be sent by Zaborg. Of course, I do not get the effect of blocking my opponent with Domain of the True Monarchs from extra deck summoning if I still have this extra deck. That's not the reason why I have Domain here. Again, I just have it for the level modulation, so on and so forth. But if I do send the extra deck and I have Domain on the field, then I'll get the effect. So after that, I have Caius, the Mega Monarch. If this card is tribute summoned, target one card on the field, banish it. And if you do, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Then, if it is a dark monster card, banish all cards with that name from the hand, main deck, extra deck, and graveyard of the player who controlled it. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing a dark monster, add this additional effect. You can target 2 cards instead. So this does not have to work against monsters. You can target any cards on the field, spells, traps, monsters. However, if you banish dark monsters, all copies of those just get banished. This is a hard counter against some dark monster decks. This is incredibly powerful. It doesn't matter if the monster's in the hand, doesn't matter if the monster's in the extra deck, doesn't matter if the monster's in the graveyard or the main deck or the field. It's all banished. It's amazing. Adea the Heavenly Squire, or the Heavenly Monarch, I have one of them. Erebus, I have one of them. And then Thestalos, the Shadow Flare Monarch. This is actually a very interesting monarch. He's basically a combination of Thestalos and Caius, the Mega Monarchs. And he doesn't really work with the engine because he doesn't have 2,800 attack and 1,000 defense, or 2,400 attack and 1,000 defense. He has 3,000. The only way to get him on the field or to search him is by using Ether to summon and search him. So if I don't need Kiraz, 90% of the time in this deck, I'm going to search out Thestalos the Shadow Flare Monarch with Ether. And the reason why is because he has a very interesting effect. You can tribute summon this card by tributing one monster your opponent controls and one tribute summon monster you control. So he has a built-in Monarch's Storm Forth. And if I'm not mistaken, this is basically treated as a kaiju effect. And because it's treated as a kaiju effect, it's not something that an unaffected card can block. Which means this is actually very, very powerful removal potentially. You have to have a tribute summon monster on your field to get this working, though. If this card is tribute summoned, you can banish one random card from your opponent's hand, and if you do, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Then, if this card was tribute summoned by tributing a level 8 or higher tribute summoned monster, you can apply this effect. Banish one card on the field, and if it was a fire or dark monster card, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original level times 200. So you get 1,000 damage automatically if you banish a card from your opponent's hand, but if you banish a fire monster on the field, you're going to do 200 times the level. If your opponent, before you summon this, has 3,000 or less life points left, you automatically win the duel with this card's summon if this card's effect resolves. And the reason why that is because you can just banish himself, and you'll do 2,000 damage plus the 1,000 that you already did from banishing a card from your opponent's hand. 3,000 damage automatically off the summon of this card, as long as you tribute summoned him over a level 8 tribute summoned monster. So there is that. Reinforcements of the army. Add one level 4 or lower warrior monster from your deck to your hand. I have Pot of Avarice. I have 3 Tenacity of the Monarchs, 3 Pantheism of the Monarchs. I have 2 Frost Blasts of the Monarchs. If you control a monster with 2,400 or more attack and 1,000 defense, target one set card on the field, destroy it. You can banish this card and one other Monarch spell and trap card from your graveyard, then target one set card on the field, destroy it. This is more proof that this is just 2-card combo deck nonsense. Still a very good card, still very interesting. It allows you to banish Monarch spells and traps from your graveyard and be able to recur them through Adea, getting her out on the field and tributing her or sending her to the grave, so on and so forth. I have 2 Restoration of the Monarchs. Activate this card by targeting one monster in your graveyard with 2,400 attack, 1,000 defense, or 2,800 attack and 1,000 defense. Special summon it in defense position, but negate its effects. Also equip it with this card. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. The equipped monster can be treated as 2 tributes for a tribute summon. You can only activate 1 Restoration of the Monarchs per turn. This is actually a really fun card. It's basically a monster reborn that makes the monster that it summons 2 tributes for whatever monster needs 2 tributes, which is very cool. The reason why I don't necessarily like this card in some aspects is because it negates the effects of that monster. Most Monarchs don't have an effect upon being special summoned, but Kiraz does. If I could get him from the graveyard and get his effect every single turn by using Restoration of the Monarchs, I'd probably have this at 3 copies in this deck, and I'd probably have Foolish Burial in the deck to throw Kiraz the Light Monarch, and then just use this effect to special summon him, or special summon him by Ether or whatever, and then continuously go into this effect, because then I would have constant ability to disrupt using a monster reborn. I understand why it's limited, right? Because that would be kind of powerful, but the problem is that Kiraz has a negative side to him. He allows the player who has cards destroyed by him to draw a card for each card that is destroyed. So if you destroy your opponent's cards, 2 of them, your opponent draws 2. So sure, you got rid of field advantage, but you're giving your opponent hand advantage, and sometimes hand advantage is more powerful than field advantage. Sometimes vice versa, just depends. I have 3 Domain of the True Monarchs. I have 1 Monarch's March of the Monarchs, 1 Return of the Monarchs, 3 the Monarch Storm Forth, 1 the Monarchs Awaken. I have 1 Jar of Avarice, 1 the First Monarch. So special summon this card as an effect monster, Fiend, Dark, level 6, attack 1,000, defense 2,400. This card is also still a trap. If summoned this way, you can discard 1 card, then declare 1 attribute. This card becomes that attribute and can be treated as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of a monster with the same attribute as this card. If this card was summoned this way, you can special summon, or you cannot special summon monsters except monsters with the card's attribute. So you have to be very careful. I would pretty much never use the discard effect to make him 2 tributes worth on my opponent's turn if I'm summoning him for defense. On my turn, if I'm using him deliberately in a strategy to summon a monster, then I would do it. Otherwise, I would just hold off on that. I have Escalation of the Monarchs. This is actually an insanely fun card and very underrated, but it's also hard to see the value in it until you have played with it. So once per turn during your opponent's main phase or your opponent's battle phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves tribute summon 1 monster. this is crazy. It allows you to take your opponent's monsters with like Thestalos, or if you have Monarch Stormforth already on the field, you can take your opponent's monsters. You don't even have to banish a card, a Monarch spell and trap from the graveyard in order to summon Ether if you're going to use Escalation. And you can just sort of do some pretty crazy moves with this. So let's say on turn 1, you got Thestalos, the Mega Monarch, on your field. You did a bunch of burn damage to your opponent. And then on turn 2, your opponent's turn, you have Escalation waiting in the wings, and you have Shadow Flare in your hand. You could activate in the battle phase. Let's say your opponent's about to attack and beat over your Thestalos. You can activate Escalation, summon Shadow Flare, take your Thestalos and your opponent's monster, do a ton of burn damage, just immediately destroy your monster. The potential is there, and it's very cool. And then I have 2 the Prime Monarchs. But that's pretty much the showcase of this deck. Now it is time to get on to the demonstration. Alright, so the Absolute Monarch absolutely wants to go second. So that's what I'm going to pick, is going second. My opponent has a Monarch deck, a mirror match. Let's see if he can get anything going. Giving him Domain, doesn't matter. I don't have any summoning in the extra deck to care about. Thestalos, the Mega Monarch, that's really cool. Of course, I'm going to bring Edea, because that's the only card I can bring with reinforcements, but it's the only card that I need to bring. Because if I summon Edea, I'm going to get Eidos. And then, so there's actually a couple of interesting things I could do here. I could summon Curaz, the Light Monarch, putting Pantheism on the floor, and then get... I could be able to banish Pantheism, get that draw, all that kind of stuff. I actually think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put Pantheism here. I'm going to summon Curaz. I'm going to destroy you, and also destroy you. Draw a card. Perfect. Banish. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't really matter what I get here, because the cool thing is I have Tenacity, and I'm going to use Tenacity to search out another Pantheism. And then now I can use yet another Pantheism to draw. Perfect. And the only effect I have is being able to summon the Prime Monarch. Now, I don't really care if Edea the Heavenly Swire leaves the field, because Edea the Heavenly Swire is going to get me my Pantheism if she leaves the field. Now, she's the only one who can attack this turn, because unfortunately, Curaz, the Light Monarch, cannot attack the turn he is normal or special summoned, which is a bit of a shame. I wish if he was normal summoned, he should be able to attack. Special summoning, fine. You want to give him that drawback because he has the special summon, that's totally fine. Alright, Mobius, the Mega Monarch. And battle phase. Now I'm going to get Pantheism back in my hand. Hopefully I get a spell and trap from Monarchs in my hand. That would be very good. I did. Very nice. So I can banish Eidos, summon Edea, and then with her, I'm going to summon another Eidos. I'm going to use Pantheism here. Throw away Restoration. Very nice. Then I'm going to use Land Robe. Awesome. So now I'm going to summon over these two with Grand Morgue. I don't have a... Well, actually, you know what? I don't have a card banished, so I'm going to go ahead and banish a Pantheism. And I think what I'll do here is... maybe I'll grab... see, this is the problem. My opponent could still go ahead and beat over me if I used Awaken. So I'll grab maybe these two alongside March. Alright, so I got Escalation, which is very good. I'll use that very shortly. And then I'm going to summon Grand Morgue over you and you. Not going to select another card. And then I get Pantheism back in my hand, and I also get Idea back in my hand. And I get to draw one. Very nice. So this is a hard decision here. I could go ahead and go for the draw 2, or what I could do is I could search out specifically a card I want. Frankly, I actually think I really want the Prime Monarchs. So that's what I'm going to do here. I really would like the Prime Monarch on my field for some recursion. And I could even summon yet again. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Banish Curaz. I got to take both of you. You no longer get Domain. I'm not selecting another spell and trap. And there we go. So with that being said, I can go to battle phase with both Grand Morgue and Mobius. And then end my turn. Now I have a Thestalos, and I'm going to be able to use him on my opponent's turn. Alright, time to use the Prime Monarch. Let's go ahead and shuffle back into the deck these two and draw one card. Alright, the end of the main phase. So my opponent isn't going to summon anything of import, so I don't need to worry about summoning over anything. It would be much better if I had Shadow Flare anyhow for this. So I'm going to activate you. Then I'm also going to activate you to shuffle 2 more cards into the deck. And draw 1. And the recursion just keeps on going. Plus the draw power is just kind of insane. Alright, so this is actually really cool because now I get to show off the effect. I'm going to summon Idea, which is going to give me an Eidos to my field. Oh, yep, that's actually a bit of a problem. I made a mistake there. Let's see. I'll banish you. Any one of these 3 would be fine. And that's fine. I'm going to be able to destroy both my opponent's monsters here. Yeah, he gets some recursion, which is unfortunate because he could potentially use that to draw. That's okay. Next turn, I will have the ability to make one of my monsters unaffected, so if he uses Storm 4th, I could make one of them unaffected, so on and so forth. I could also Tribute Summon over any of them. I am going to be tributing Zaborg on my opponent's turn, just for the fun of it. As major disruption, by the way. You're going to see how hilarious this is. Tenacity of the Monarchs. So he's going to use Thestalos. I'm going to use this effect. Both of these cards are going to go back to my deck, and I'm going to draw up one. Pot of Avarice. Alright. Banish that card. What are you picking? You can go ahead and have your domain. It's not going to matter. Alright. I really don't think that matters. Or why would my opponent do that? I'm supposing he has a tribute summon? Yeah, he does. Okay, Ryza. Ryza is very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and tribute. Use the effect now. And tribute over you and you. Alright, so those things go back. I missed the activation of Monarchs. So you almost always miss the activation of Return of the Monarchs on enemy phase because it's a win you tribute summon the monster. It's very strange how that is. I'm actually going to go ahead and destroy Zaborg. It's going to seem kind of weird that I'm doing that, but there's good reason for that. It's also a good reason why I did not use March of the Monarchs or grab that to my hand, because I just don't need it. So with this, I'm going to get Pantheism to my hand. I'm also going to get a Vassal to my hand, and looks like I'm going to be bringing Idea. Zaborg gets destroyed, and then all of these cards go to the grave. What's crazy about this is I'm then going to be able to activate these on my opponent's turn. And Ryza and Domain are gone. Unfortunate for my opponent, to say the least. Okay, now I get to actually use this effect, which is crazy. Let's see, I don't think... Yeah, so I can destroy one monster with this. And then I can go ahead and put 5 monsters back and draw 2. So I'm going to put these 2 back. You back. Those should be fine. And I think... Yeah, I can't do anything else here, unfortunately. I think I'm just going to summon Thestalos. So the cool thing about Thestalos is I pretty much just win this duel if my opponent has a monster in his hand. Activate this. Sure. I'm going to get Ether. A very long demonstration, but I've been able to show off much of this deck's capabilities here, which is pretty cool. So yes, my opponent has a Thestalos in his hand, and he just takes 1600 damage. Just for the fun of it. And that's the demonstration of Absolute Monarch. Kind of went on a bit of a tangent. going back and forth with my opponent, which is pretty darn cool, especially because my very first demonstration of Monarch Reign was not anywhere near as elaborate, nor did it show off as many cards or anything of that function. So that's awesome. I want to thank you for joining me. If you like my content, please upvote and follow, or like and subscribe, leave a comment down below, and while you're at it, have a great and glorious day gaming.